Hello and welcome back to Look Up, the show with me, aronmsound, who interjects himself into conversations in the third person right now today. And nobody ever asked me to be involved in those conversations, specifically except for the ones where they do. And that hasn't happened yet. So let's move on. In any case, today I had a whole set of plans, and they're all thrown right out the window. Why? Because it turns out our friend in the Pearlyverse just can't help herself. She jumped her own shark. She had Nick Fuentes on, and boy, did she give us over here in the me world some ammunition. And by us, I mean me in the royal sense. But in any case, this is serious stuff, folks. I have for some time said that the Pearlyverse has an agenda of, underlying intentions. And I don't want to pin them down, but now I kind of can, and it sucks. Because now I just got to stop pushing or watching the content. This person is no longer having a conversation to move the conversation along. Unfortunately, Pearly seems to have jumped into the political world, pushing her agenda of interests with that political world because of whomever she is either in contact with, hanging out with, or choosing to book on her show. I don't really care. All I know is that this is a new form of Nazism. This is an anti-immigration person. This is a hate speech person who's going to explain to us what has actually happened to them and how many things they've been penalized with for their behaviors and speech. And if your speech is this horrifyingly bad and bigoted and prejudiced, then maybe it's time to not double down. But the conversation goes on, and I'm just going to preface this entire bit here where the reason I went to this one, there's a couple videos up. I'm sure there's another one come up now. Boy, talk about clickbait. This one says, Nick Fuentes, I support Putin and oppose democracy. He says, Nick Fuentes, I support Putin and oppose democracy. And being that Pearly's show is not a news show, it's not a politics show, it's not a show like mine where I'm trying to build a larger picture of structure about our own prisons and a structure in society and the world that keeps us in line that we can break out of. Trying to make that obvious. It's a political concept. Maybe someday I will interview folks like this, but I would never do it alongside a dating show. That's just not sensible. I would start a total different conversation and make it clear that this is a political show now. I'm doing something different. But in this case, Pearlythings straight jumps the shark. And I'm sad to say, this is a bad look. I mean, it's going to get you a lot of likes, probably, and a different audience. It's probably going to prolong your show for a little bit. Maybe you're getting tired of the conversation. I don't know, Pearl. But the attention you're going to get alongside it, I'm sorry to tell you this, but this is way more than you may know. And your lack of perspective and youth is exactly what's being exploited in the situation, Pearl. And that's my warning as an elder in this situation and somebody who is extremely well-versed in the practices and tools of wagging the dog. And you, Pearly, are getting wagged so hard, it's unreal. But I would have expected it because you're so clearly open to one vein of reasoning and you want that reasoning to be true. Because it fits your line of agenda, and that's frightening. Ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, cross-eyed mosquitoes, and bull-legged Mickey frickin' ants, white nationalism based in Christian conservatism overseas immigrants on immigrant visas talking about immigration in a negative viewpoint. It's the most amazing cognitive dissonance I've ever seen. Immigrants, both in their own country and where they're working, on immigrant visas, working on job visas, talking negatively about other immigrants. And in this case, the conversation moves on to how essentially Nick tells us he's a classic FSB media plant, and he pushes all of the RTV points of conversation. And mind you, he admits to no knowledge. This guy admits to no knowledge. And you're like, Aaron, what do you have to bring to the table in this? You'll find out. This is a good one. This is all me right here. And you're going to be like, oh, damn. Yeah, I might take my hat off during this. This made me stop my normal morning evolutions to come over here and talk to you about this, because this is insane. Once this one popped up, I really was like, what is going on? No, Pearl jumped the white nationalist shark. So yeah, there's like a Chad Broham shark. Are you pureblood? Anyhow, sorry. This is just taking me aback because I knew it would happen at some point. I just didn't know it would happen in such spectacular fashion like this, because, whoa! Pearl! Oh, God. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry to offer you. This is the other thing. If you can't have a conversation on YouTube and you know they're going to cut it out because of somebody, you know you're doing wrong. This is like my whole thing. By the way, sideways. If you need an imaginary person who you think can hurt you to get you to do the right thing, you weren't going to do the right thing in the first place. And this brings me to, if you need to put the whole video somewhere else where that doesn't have any restrictions against hate speech, or, you find yourself on a chat page or a group that, like, the reason you're there is because everybody can freely talk about how much they hate someone, you might be part of the problem and also taking part in the obelisk. So you've sold yourself and others down into a prison that is unnecessary. And that's really I'm turning 14 again. I'm so excited about this because this is such a great example of, like, the internal fighting that's fed to us. And here is a paid representative, I guarantee you. I don't know, but I can guarantee, just based off of his talking points, because they're the RTV talking points, and this is just old school counterintelligence information coming out from the FSB through its RTV network. I mean, this is, if you don't know about this ploy, by the way, it's been sold to the kids since 2008 was when the meme mill started. And that pushed the agendas that ended up allowing for Trump to get in. And so the deepest of dissent between us all. If you think that this is all natural and that we're all actually this bifurcated and separated, and no, we were stamping this out as a nation, and a group of people got sold a bill of goods, and it has virally attacked us. And this is one of these folks who doesn't know any better. He sees just his point of view and doesn't know much. So I'm sorry. Now that I've advertised them long enough, ladies and gentlemen, oi! Just Pearlythings jumps the shark with Nick Fuentes.
look at like Putin as a good example, is why I'm pro-Putin.
Don't.
He is clearly the despot of Russia. He's like the king, the dictator of
Like,
Russia.
that's a good thing.
And a lot of people say, what? I can't imagine living in a country where, it's tyrannical like that. Well, it's actually very similar. Like I've never lived in Russia.
Okay, pause. Well, it's very similar, but I've never lived in Russia. Okay, punk. And I say punk because you don't know any better. I lived in Russia in 1999 doing production on a play with a late oligarch's grandson, a very popular and famous person in Russia, both in politics and in music and in theater and in social culture and in art. He was a Renaissance man. He was also the grandson of somebody who was with Stalin when he passed. One of the few people who knows what happened to Stalin was his grandfather. His grandfather went on to lead their congressional system, I guess you could call it, for 40 plus years, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, I lived there, right in the center of Gorky Park, with a lot of Russian kids, and they were so excited because when Yeltsin went out of power, they got to vote. And they were so excited because they got to vote. And I was there that day. There's a group of us that were there from the U.S., representing our portion of the production staff for the show we were doing. And when they came back, the kids were all pale-faced and they were very unhappy. And we asked them what happened, and they told us that the majority of them never got to vote because they said their vote was already placed for them. And when we asked them, what do you mean? They said, well, yeah, apparently we voted for Putin. And that's how that worked. I've also got stories of experiences where I paid police officers there, where we got pulled over while we're driving down the street, and the person driving the car got into the police car and paid the officer. Corruption is much more apparent. The person who was hosting us had 2 blue lights on his car because he could pay to be a minister of transportation. And that allowed him to, in my own experience, this is a whole great story. I got driven through Gorky Park late at night to go to the National Museum of Photography to go see this person's photographic displays. And the story's a little longer than I want to share, but anyways, the guy could break any laws because he had paid for the ability to break laws. Now, that doesn't happen in democracy. That doesn't happen when you have representation of the people. That doesn't happen. The difference in rich and poor at the time, I couldn't have imagined would ever touch the United States, except for now it's looking like, and I've experienced the same behaviors or similar behaviors as to what it was becoming like in Russia at the time. And that was because of manufactured scarcity. Now he's going to go on to talk some more, and I'm going to interject about what he doesn't know. And what he doesn't know is tenfold. He is so filled with his idealism of what he thinks something is, yet he doesn't have any actual experience with it. And this is kind of the archetype of the salesmanship of this level of the obelisk. I'm going to sell you a bill of goods I don't even know anything about. And this has been my thing with Pearl, is like Pearl has no dating knowledge. Not really. Clearly. She has no sexual knowledge. She has no O-face. She has nothing but the comparative of her own limitation and what she really wants. So she wants to find an answer, and she's just pulling in the things that support and vindicate her answer, validate her answer. And that's not how you come to an answer, folks. That's how you get a privileged, entitled answer out of your situation, and how you can make yourself believe that these insane statements are somehow logical. I have no experience with it, but I can tell you what it is. No, you can't, kid. And you're wrong. You're just too sure of yourself, and someday I hope you figure it out. But you had to leave your own country. You're not even 30, are you? You know you effed up when you got to leave your own country. You have to. It's not a choice. That you're that disliked that you can't work, you can't make money, you can't do anything. Wow. I mean, were you going to face prison? What'd you do? Oh, no. You just kept telling people that it was all fear-mongered state based off of your basic belief system. You don't know any different. But you know what? Hey, man. And I want you to think about this. If somebody had been telling him that the Easter Bunny was the cause of all this, do you think we'd be hearing about the Easter Bunny or anybody believe him? No. Instead, it's an idealism that's been passed down. And these are the oldest ploys. It's like the same regurgitated playbook, which I think is the other portion of this is if it's silly enough. There's also the side like me and many like me who are more logically inclined, more sensible, more grounded, more experienced in the world, have a perspective to say, yo, this is insane. But that's also, I now make myself into a portion of the group that takes part in the fight. And that's where I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to point this out and step back and let it burn itself out like they normally do. That's why you see so many different faces in those organizations over time, because they end up burning themselves out. You can't hate on people. You can't burn that nastiness and carry a torch, literally, of good, saying you're good, under the auspices of religion too. I mean, or geopolitical ideology. You can't do that for too long before it eats itself. Because what you're saying is that you support a system that we've already moved past by several hundred years. But you're so in fear of everybody getting a voice that you might be drowned out because your voice is so toxically disturbing to everybody else. That's what you're actually saying. You're a coward and you don't think that your idea will stand up to the ideas of evolution. And by that, I don't mean like evolution standard of human change. I'm talking about the evolution of thought, the growth of human potential, the change into different forms of society and being. You, unfortunately, Mr. Fuentes, without you saying much more, are a version of human that we're leaving behind. And Pearly seems to want to be just like you. Because as the rest of humanity moves forward into its purpose on the next step, as things change, you're screaming, I can't stand the change. Can you imagine the change? And then on top of it, let me tell you something I don't know anything about, but it seems greener on this side of the fence because there's one rule, and I like that. It's so much cowardice. It's insane. Anyhow, what do you want to say to us about a place you don't know anything about?
Actually seems quite similar. Like you get arrested in the United Kingdom for saying stuff I say on my show every night for hate speech. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Okay.
And, you know, which was like an anti-government thing. And I didn't break any laws, but I still.
Okay, so you did. That's a lie. They have you on film. Yeah, you pushed hate speech that day. The reason she looked at the camera off to the side, she went, oh, fuck. I've just welcomed a January 6th riot member onto my show. Sorry, that look right there, Pearl, like, oh, damn. Yeah, Pearl, you don't know what you're doing in this situation. You didn't vet the situation well enough. It's very clear.
Not harassed by the government. I got put in a no-fly list. They froze my bank accounts,
straight.
all that.
Damn straight
so
they
all
did.
Of that was...
And you know why? You know why, dude? Because you're a traitor to your own fucking government. Excuse my language, folks. Let's call those people what they are. They were pushed by a foreign agenda They believed it, forgot where the ideas came from, acted like it was their own, followed the voice of a person they didn't know who they were, who was sending them around in circles, which, by the way, some of us in the dog wagger side know exactly who that was. Know exactly where it comes from. It was obvious. If you know, got had straight up like by a con man who'd been selling an idea the whole time. They were like, you don't even need to speak English. You could look at this, guys. You can botch the English language and they will look for meaning in it. Wow. If you only knew, kids, how manipulated by a foreign government you were, you would freak out. Freak out! Because it's not funny. And it's a genius way to separate us all from unity in our own country. How do I know that this is what it is? Because it's the oldest FSB playbook. When it was the KGB, that's what they did. And we saw it was so successful that we started to practice it in our own country with Intelco Pro and a couple other organizations that shouldn't have been operating in the U.S. anyways. And that's a totally separate conversation about the history of our intelligence services. Albeit, amazing work they do. I'll give them every credit because, as it was once said to me by someone in the know, if we were to know how many threats and how many things on a daily basis actually go down that are being mitigated, we wouldn't sleep. So good work, folks. I salute ya for that. But I don't salute those that would undermine the well-being of the mass or keep us in a structure to not be able to be our freest of selves. And someone, shock, Pearl. Be in shock. You're starting to realize the rabbit hole you brought yourself down into? The trench that you just put yourself in? You're not going to be able to back out of this one, Pearl. Rough seas ahead, folk. It sucks. Poor Pearl. I mean, she just asked for it, though. She just said, how do I wound my show? That's what I'm saying. Is she trying to tank her show? I know she wanted to go home. But you going to go home to like a white nationalist? Are they going to let you back into the country? We'll talk about it. Oh, you might get fired from your volleyball gig. Whoa. Then you'd have to go home. Is she trying to tank her show? Pearl trying to tank her show. I think that's the title of this one. Is Pearl trying to tank her show? Wow. I haven't even gotten 44 seconds into a 10-minute video. Here we go. SmackDown 2023 M-Sound. Holy shit.
All of that was from the Charlottesville.
No, I was from the Capitol.
No, it's from the Capitol.
Sorry.
Yeah, he was also at Charlottesville too, folks.
I'm not. Okay. So that's later.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't giggle about that, Pearl. That's not cute. This is what I'm talking about. Pearl doesn't know how to host this kind of interview. She's not being benign. She's not taking a objective point of view. She's part of the discussion and pressing an agenda here. And I wonder if she knows that she is. If she does, then, well, this lets you know everything that Pearl is. If she doesn't, then faux pas, you should probably ask somebody before you go do something like this to get clicks. Because this is not in your lane. Relationships, wifey school, online arguments with video game players. There you go. The incel world, and that's fine. But now you've jumped into the full tilt what the underlying agenda, with the soft power you had is no longer soft power. You've exposed yourself, Pearl. Just by having this guy on. It doesn't mean you don't even have to believe anything he's saying. That's what's even worse about this. You, I don't think, have the perspective to know that it doesn't matter. That it's the way you're interviewing the guy right off the bat and what you're letting him say and where you're leading the conversation in your questions straight off the bat. Wow. So much disturbing to someone like me. Because I have such a, I have so many personal experiences with every side of the discussion that you're having here. And knowledge that I'm sorry, you're not going to get past it, both firsthand and accumulated. You're just not going to get past it because what you're preaching here is nothing less than propaganda. And I don't think you realize that it is, which is even more insidious. It's one of my favorite words right now. Insidious, duplicitous, disturbing. I wonder if the attorney will take your call now. He's going to look at you and be like, Pearl. Maybe you'll have a quick call with him and he'll be like, Pearl, I'm sorry. This is going to be it because I can't associate myself with you. There's going to be a lot of dust on this one, Pearl. You just turned your backside to your audience and farted on camera, gaping holed out. Seriously. You pulled up your dress and you... Yeah. Wow. Trying to appease too many people. This is crazy.
Get to that. Okay,
Yeah.
but you think it can.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So the point is that the level of
There's a lot of jank
despotism, the structure of the government doesn't have a lot to do with the level of despotism. In other words,
wait, what? The
these
structure
countries
of
we
the
live in
government
now,
doesn't have
which
a
we
lot to do with the
consider so
despotism. The structure of the government doesn't have a lot to do with the despotism. Oh my God, kid. So stupid. All right. The structure allows the despotism. He's about to talk about something he doesn't know anything about. And let me just show you how stupid he is. When Putin came into power, one of the first things he did is he went after corruption. But why did he go after corruption? Because he wanted to corral all of the wealthiest people in the country who had taken control during the collapse of the Soviet Union, the people who had taken control of the businesses and the organizations, some of which, by the way, came over to the U.S. and still maintain knowledge and control of refrigeration train lines, transport services. Beyond that, I'm talking about planes, trains, and automobiles, storage services, military sales, property, you name it. These were organizations within the government, much less the military, industrial, and the policing systems. There's so many subsystems that were controlled very tightly by the government for 80 years. So whoever was at the top of those chains ended up running a lot of those, let's say, oligarchs or companies immediately thereafterwards, because none of the control systems changed. Those people didn't come out of power in those companies and systems. Just the titles changed. You understand? So it wasn't that suddenly a whole system went away. The name of the system did, and the way they did business went away, which opened up kind of a Wild West, which allowed for the oligarchs and the old school corruption that was always seething underneath everything else to come to control. Now, the oligarchs were created, the true oligarchs as we know them now, were created, and they essentially were trying to create a crime syndicate. The king of this crime syndicate at the time was put in prison on TV by Putin, and Putin was hailed as the great democratizer. He was the great corruption breaker. He was all these things. So he won a lot of privilege and accolade amongst his country members, and he gained a lot of fear from the oligarch because he imprisoned the guy who was in charge of the crime syndicates at the time. Not long afterwards, though, turns out what Putin did was use that to his benefit, because as a longtime member of the FSB, previously KGB, and as the guy who ran East Germany intelligence for quite some time, he understood the power of controlling all edges of the mob, of sales, of money, and that you as a leader could take a whole set of off the books income out of the chain and funnel it directly to yourself, creating a power structure that exists outside of the power structure. Okay, so now we know this. So basically what the dude did is he brought the rest of the oligarch in, spoke to them all, and said, you can either take part in the program, or I can strip you of everything and throw you in prison for the rest of your life. What do you think they did, kids? They took part. They jumped on the mother freaking bandwagon. So now I've told you this story. Now I'm going to let you hear from the baby boy who doesn't know anything of what he's talking about. But boy, he seems sure of himself because it seems logical to him. I would even say that he's been sold or paid such a bill of goods that he's willing to just, stare at you two and scream at the screen because it doesn't fit what he wishes were true. But a kid like this wants to fight a war. Look, he's wearing fatigues. He thinks it's fun to go to battle. Well, I think he should go spend some time on the Russian side and find out how they treat their soldiers. That would be the number one easiest thing. Or maybe go talk to some Chechens. Or my colleagues at the theater in central Moscow after we left. Those of whom survived the bombing and then poisoning. That's a whole other story. Yeah, the theater that we did our show at was also the theater that later got taken hostage, and I lost a couple of friends. But that's what happens when you experience the wider world. More things come into your life, the more you subject yourself to. But that's totally separate. That's how you break the obelisk. This guy is building it for you so we can all fight about it. So let's keep moving, because otherwise I spend longer in this little prison, and I don't like that prison. No matter how much this guy does, and Pearly seems to like, oh, I like your prison. That's a pretty prison. Have you seen my poop pile? Oh, I built a huge poop pile. It's pretty. And pink, because I'm Pearly.
Are actually not as free as we really think, because
really,
we
bro?
talk about like China, social credit score in China, facial recognition, etc.
Yes.
You kind of have a social credit score in America. What you'll find, like me, because what do you get in trouble for in China? Being against.
You kind of have a false equivalency in that point. Let me take kind of. You have a false equivalency in that point. This is the same Maynard arguing. Well, and this is how he does this, by the way. I figured it out the other day. Well, women have a strain to open the doors for them. And because cows give milk, and people drink milk, if they're not lactose intolerant, that makes men and women different. Huh? Wait, hold on. What? Non sequitur. I'm going to say non sequitur. Non associated. Yeah. So say something that's argumentative but true. Something non associated that's a comparative that may very well be true but is non sequitur to the point. And then return to your point as if you validated your argument with a non sequitur. It's called a bullshit sandwich. It's the opposite of a shit sandwich, where you put the bullshit on the outside, and instead of actually putting what sandwich somebody requested, you put the whatever you feel like bullshit on the inside. So basically, you've got bullshit on the outside, a thin slice of lettuce on either side, and bullshit in between. It's just a shit sandwich. It's not even a shit sandwich. It's a bullshit sandwich. It's like the what do they call that? The double engineer that doesn't exist. It's the double down. That's right. It's called the double down. Yeah, I've given him a name. He's the engineer that doesn't exist. Not even Engineer X. That name's taken by a really cool dude. Very smart with an incredible record collection. Let's just say that. Anyhow, totally off subject from this punk. Oh yeah, you hear me. I am just salacious today. I don't care. This is incredibly destructive to Pearly. I think it. I mean, like having this guy on, it's just so bad for her. It's just I feel bad. See, I'm empathetic. I kind of care. I do care. Great topics. I mean, she was going somewhere. She was taking a conversation somewhere, even if I didn't like it. Even if I didn't like it. By the way, if Abba and Preach ever see this, yeah, wear a hat half the time. What of it, buddy? You wear a hoodie half the time. Mm-hmm. Preach wears a hat too. You know why. You know why. Yeah, because we just haven't been bothered to get ready for the day. In this case, I was like, I got to talk about this. This is crazy. I didn't think I was... I thought I was going to have to keep searching for content, and it just popped up. I had a whole other list of things I was going to talk about that is not as important, really, to pay attention to the obelisk, to the Ben's agenda being shat down on us in the obelisk. Jesus.
It's the government. Okay, I'm against the government in America. I'm banned from PayPal. I'm banned from having a checking account.
Okay.
I'm put on a fly list.
The equivalent. By the way, okay, so I'm banned. I hate the government, and then I'm banned from holding to the. Yo, bro. Let me just make this clear to you. You are an enemy of the state. That's no small feat. You didn't even do anything to be to show valor. You're just a coward who hates an idea, because at your base core you have fear of what is changing or what you might think is going to hurt others, and instead of taking part in a discussion, you want the discussion to be wiped sideways and have you dominate not just the situation, but to roll back the discussion so we can't even have it. That's really, really why also I won't share beyond this video. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to keep moving on, because this is Pearly jumped the shark on this one, and people that would have you believe idiocy and stupid concepts would also have you commit atrocities freely. Now, I'm paraphrasing that, but that's the truth. People who would have you believe stupid ideas would also have you commit atrocity for stupid reasons. Once again, paraphrasing, but if you don't believe it, you didn't have, like me, great aunts who had tattoos on their arms, who told me of their struggles and fighting their way out of camps. You didn't have a family business get taken from the family, an extended family of like 15, because of their background and beliefs. You might have not had family corralled into a giant prison without walls and told you had to stay there in a place where you couldn't hunt for food and you had to buy it from the local store when you didn't know how to. Bigotry imprisons not just the mind, it ends up imprisoning people out of fear, and the benefit goes to the top pinnacle of that pyramid scheme. Because when there's blood in the streets, people, the real estate is cheap. You believe me on that one. My favorite example of that is, I think we've all heard the story, how Trump representatives were floating around New Orleans while people were still on top of their roofs asking them, hey, would you sell your property right now? Of course, because they want to make the $10,000 they're going to make so they can move away. Not believing that insurance would cover them. Oh, and in a lot of cases, apparently those organizations that bought the houses also got the insurance money back. So they rebuilt the houses or just tore them down and took the insurance money. Sold the land off later. There's so many terrible stories of this. Blood in the streets, real estate is cheap. The more real estate you have, the more control you have over the land. The more control you have over the people that are on the land. The more places you have to manufacture the things that people will buy to control the people. Control the idea, because comfort creates idealism for what should be. And as soon as you don't have comfort, all those ideals go right out the window and you start fighting for base values. What you don't have, what you think somebody else has. And somebody like this would pit you against your neighbor for an idea he knows nothing actually about, which is even more disturbing, which makes me believe that he's being paid. I mean, how old is this person? I'm surprised. Why isn't he reporting from war? See how long it takes for him to not like the idea of living in Russia by going to Russia. That's another thing, dude. If you're overseas already, why don't you go over there? Oh, you're on a no-fly list. Well, you get on a train. You're in Europe. Drive. You can drive to Moscow from London. Believe it or not. It's actually a beautiful, amazing drive. I've done the majority of it through the Eastern Europe, all the way from, it would be Amsterdam, and then came back through and we ended up in Ireland at the end of that trip, through the UK. So you can do that. We went and, this is a pre-takeover Croatia. We did a festival in Croatia, which was amazing. I think they still do them, but there was a lot more UK involvement at that time. I don't know if that's still the case as of post-COVID. Anyhow, speaking of the difference of having knowledge of the area and not having knowledge of the area, let's go back to this nonsense and progress.
It's actually quite similar. And
No,
so
it's
the point is, what a king does is he eliminates corruption, because a king set against these oligarchical interests, the rich billionaires.
What the single corrupt figure does is he eliminates corruption elsewhere because he's the single corruption. Talk about a point of view that is so uninformed by history. I'm not sure, how does this person have a following if not for the ignorance of the people listening to him? History is a thing, and you can learn from it. Even if it was written in the eyes of the winners, you can still get an idea of what happened to the losers. And in fact, if you know how to read history and go find the information both online and in books at your local library, or just online, there's just tons of history books online and information written by people who aren't just rando that have a background in history, that study those matters and done the research for you and I, they spent their lives doing it, that you'll find out that there's a lot more about the surroundings of history, the underdogs, the winners, the losers, and every step we take into the future becomes the past. So we actually grow and learn how to do more research, and we find more as we uncover more and more, and technology gets better and better. And I promise you that this will never end. That's part of evolution. That is another form of evolution, our intellectual growth and historical growth and our knowledge of self, so long as it's not wiped out by a cataclysm or some catastrophic event. Which at its base core is what I believe, I would say, part of the bigger sales gimmick of the obelisk is that it sells like, oh, there's some impending doom. You better be on top when that doom happens. And that's really what's in the root of these folks' fear factor arguments, is that they want to be on the top of the heap when their imagined call from God comes. Let me just say it. And they would have the world go to war to facilitate their rapture, I would say. So watch out, because all it is a cult, not unlike the Hale-Bopp cult. Just waiting for the star to pass over so we can all drink the poison. Except their poison is a world war they want to start to facilitate and validate what they've been saying. And I keep hearing these kids who don't know any better, don't realize that, every 10 years or so, not even that, every other year, there's another group that says this is the year it's going to happen because it looks like us to be a reasonable fear state, not realizing that, one, we learn more because we see more because of technology, we are growing more, and it is less likely, despite the fact that we have so many nuclear arms, but it is less likely because humans innately are self-preservative. You can look throughout human history, and we are coming to find that even after Younger Dryas, we went down in the holes that we had built at the beginning of the other ice age. So, wow. Ignorance must be Mickey frickin' Bliss.
In the former or the post-Soviet Union, you had all these guys that bought off the state industries. You had a dictator fighting against them for power. And, well, the dictator won. Putin won. And so now all these powerful groups serve the Russian government. And if you have a good guy like Putin at the head of it who is trying to... If you have
a good guy... Let me stop you right there. He's a white nationalist. He is a master of poisons. He has killed apparently hundreds and hundreds. He was the intelligence chief of the East German KGB. He has openly poisoned and murdered his political foes. He's made people disappear. He's stolen over $100 billion of the Russian wealth. Does that sound like a good guy to you? Think to yourself, why would someone like that call him a good guy? What could you be getting at? What could you be benefiting from that by calling him a good guy? He's expecting something, or he's getting paid for it. Or he's that afraid because somebody came to his door and said, you shall say he's a good guy. Хорошо? Я знаю. Ты знаю? Хорошо. Спасибо. All right. Yeah. But маленький русский. I speak just a teeny bit. But чуть-чуть. Чуть-чуть. Very little. Very little. Enough to know that this guy, he doesn't know.
Bring glory to Russia and protect his people and elevate the standard of living. guess
He
what?
didn't.
Everybody wins. And so the purpose
No,
of the king
dude,
is you
you're
got to have
speaking
a
out
guy
of ignorance.
who he learns
Pearl,
to
he's
rule at a
speaking out of
young age. He's
ignorance.
a
He
master
doesn't
of
know.
politics. He's the responsible, accountable person for what goes on in the country. If everybody has a problem, blame the king. And he is working in the best interest of the
Well,
nation.
first off, hold on a
what if
second.
he-
Putin isn't a king, schmuck. He's a president. Technically should be voted in because they claim to be a democracy. But they aren't, and we know that. It's apparent. It's also apparent in the way that the voting systems go, as I've explained. But much less that, doofface. Hold on a second. I'm going to screenshot this because that's the doofface I think that should be on the... Yep, screenshot the Mickey frickin' program. Look at that goof. Pearl, you should be ashamed. I mean, to your core, you should be absolutely ashamed. I should be ashamed for having my phone on. But that's besides the point. Totally different etiquette. No, Pearl, you should be ashamed. If this is your agenda, guess what? Your agenda's gone way the frick off the rails. You've jumped the shark. This is not your vein. And you're going to get a lot of views on this, but you're also going to lose a whole bunch of your crowd. If you're going to go into this vein, you can't be politely pressing and politely allowing for agenda to go along. You have to be objective and ask the good questions and do some research.
Doesn't represent the people's interests.
Well, then you get like what you have in America.
What do you mean?
You get a government that doesn't represent the people's interest, and then horrible things happen.
The government that doesn't represent your interests, it's not the people at large, and colloquially, we go with how the vote represents the majority of people in that vote, down to a local level. Part of our lack of involvement is someone telling everybody, you're not involved. Our government doesn't do what we want. No, it doesn't do what a tiny slice of the public wants. And even that isn't even true. Right now, we've seen how our Supreme SCOTUS will capitulate to a minority of America whose belief values are more important to them than the laws that have already been perpetrated by previous courts. That's not important to them. They'll overturn previously substantiated law. By the way, déjà vu, vujade. Pearl. Yeah. I'd be very surprised if Pearl didn't have some kind of issue with the State Department coming back to the U.S., or that somebody in the UK system didn't start looking at her visa. I hope that stuff's in order for her, because goodness gracious, let me tell you, if it's not, or her taxes coming back over here, or either way, holy moly, don't play with that stuff, kids. Let me tell you something. As somebody who does tour management and payroll between overseas and the U.S., don't play with those people, because they get you. That's how they get you in the end, is the taxes. They'll figure out a way to be like, oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, no, you can say what you want. Oh, go ahead. We'll get you on your taxes. Oh, you wanted to come back into the country? Ooh, would you guys step in here? I got a video I want to share with you and see what you say about this. I've seen it happen in front of me. So beware. I'm just telling you, experience tells me this is a jump over a shark, Pearl. Beware. You should call your attorney. I hope you talked to an attorney before you had this meeting. What is YouTube? YouTube can't. I'm sorry. By the way, it is monetized. There was an advertisement at the beginning, so. Wow. I just went way. Wow. This is just a wow, folks. Isn't it? This is me. I'm less than 3 minutes into a 10-minute video, and I am an hour into talking. I think this is a record.
Happen.
Well, but I'm saying, wouldn't the same thing happen with a king?
Well, yeah.
Or couldn't it?
It could.
Yeah.
But the point is
But the
that
difference is, in a democracy, we can elect them out of office. And
Yes,
you
thank
could
you for pointing
argue,
that out.
that, okay, we are influenced by the media, right, and special interest groups, but and arguably some people say steal an election. However, at the end of the
Don't give
day,
it
it's still your
breathing
choice
room,
who you
Pearl,
vote
if it's
for.
not true.
Yeah, but see, the problem is that it doesn't really that's the idea in theory, and that's part of like this super prison that we live in is
Okay, so he's confabulating two ideas because somebody told him about the super prison. And that's one of these things in the right-wing world. They've taken a piece of the larger truth of the mental prisons that we provide ourselves that limit us to non-player characters and something where we are all individuals. We're all made of stars. Okay? And when I say that, I literally mean we are all stardust. We wouldn't be here if the planet Earth didn't have microbial matter brought to it, alongside its own enzyme and magnetosphere. That's what creates the base sludge that then perpetrates DNA, is a combination of the right things at the right time. I just can't let truth and fact and science be undermined by kids who don't have a perspective. And then on top of that, the line of conversation, even though she just had some conjecture, she seems very willing to let him run away with the idea because it fits her agenda. And I think she wants this conversation to happen so that she can have it said on her platform, which is even worse.
What do you mean super prison?
Like, you can be in a prison and then you can be in like the country is a prison and like you're in like
the country is a prison. Okay, prisons you can't leave. We can leave our country. Even if you don't have a passport, by the way. It's just harder to travel because they're going to question your identity because somebody used some planes some time ago to fly into a building. Change the world. Things were way different before that. It was truly a free world, by the way. 9/11 messed us up. Messed everything up. Self-defensive, knee-jerk response. So kids, if you don't remember that, you don't know what life was like before that. You would think that we live in a prison to some degree, but really the prison is in our minds. And it's a pyramid scheme that applies to larger life that has nothing to do with governmental structure. It owns that through our perpetuation of how we build our own prisons. But it does not have a better or worse syndrome in reality when it comes to the difference between democracy and non-democracy. That's just not a comparative. There's an evolutionary reason why people said, you know what, we should have a say. Because it makes it so that you don't live a prison life. He clearly has never been to a non-democratic state and experienced living there. And I'd say that his flippant attitude towards it is that same thing of, I see it on the other side of the screen, but I don't know that it's real. He doesn't even know, he's not old enough to even know what it was like in the period where Russia was gaining its freedom after the wall fell. Post-Soviet Russia, true post-Soviet Russia, was an inspiration and a reminder that the U.S. only 120 years ago was the Wild West. And anyway, Wild West lasted until the 1930s. Kids, if you don't know that, the perspective is just outside of your reach. And if you're not looking for that, it's convenient to look at things that facilitate and validate your idea system. But let me tell you something. This is nothing less than the old school neo-Nazi combination, KGB, white nationalist limitation. Let's pit the two sides together to fight so you ignore what the larger picture is, Pearly. I'm speaking to you now, Pearl. if you didn't know that you were just had by having this person on, then I'd have to guess that you either intend to push this agenda or you're not as nuanced or intellectually grown to understand that you are opening up a platform for this person who shouldn't have one at all. That these ideas shouldn't be exposed to air. No matter how much you believe in free speech, part of that freedom of speech is the ability to acknowledge what is not acceptable amongst adults. What we've moved past, or what's plain stupid, and to call it as such. Wow, that's just stupid. Wow, that doesn't make any sense with reality. And if cognitive dissonance ensues after the fact, then you go, oh, there it is. You're giving yourself away. This person doesn't even have any experience with what they're talking about, but they'd have you believe, insanity, bigotry.
A mental prison, which is the idea that like we think we're free, but we're really not. And not like I'm some big freedom fighter or something, but what I mean by that is
apparently not.
We don't even understand the extent to which like our government doesn't represent us for the reason that you just said, because everybody has an.
So he thinks that the Russian government is a better system because it's just given up on representation, is what he's saying. Ours doesn't really represent me or my statement, myself. It doesn't include it. So the polar opposite that just doesn't include anything except for what the king wants. Yeah, that's better. A chance at representation is better than none at all, folks. Let me say this again. A chance at representation should be better than none at all. But this person would literally have you believe because it benefits them. Once again, this is where it's like, dude, how stupid do you think? How stupid is the audience that's listening to this person? It's got me incensed because you'd have to be crazy stupid. You'd have to just be like, oh, this fits my idea. But that's what a lot of this limitation in mindset breeds. It's why I'm so disturbed that Pearl would have this on, because it's literally saying her agenda is about this. I thought it was just in the dating world and how it affects things, but boy, she's really pressing the big obelisk. She wants that Ben to crush you, and for all of us to stay in this mental prison by convoluting the conversation and having a know-nothing on to validate that conversation. Holy shit.
In their head that, oh, if we don't like the government, we'll just vote them out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's a nice idea, but when have we ever voted out like the bad things that are going on in our country?
Dude, have you just not been alive long enough? Is that what it is? Constantly. That's the whole of the 20th century. When have we ever voted out things that weren't suiting us? The past 100 and 200 and the whole time, from the time we started the country, from the time that the founding fathers started the country, that's been the practice. You moron. Not looking at actual history, just, what are you looking at? Even he's either having such cognitive dissonance. I just can't even believe that a person like this exists and it has a platform, and then Pearl gives him a platform. What is happening in the world, people?
The Iraq War was very unpopular. It's still going on. It was unpopular 15 years ago.
I thought it was over. It's still going on.
Yeah,
still going on. We're still
wait, hold
there.
on a second. No, it's okay, so the Iraq War is not technically still going on. we are assisting with counterinsurgency because of what we caused over there over a 20-year period in time of attacking the country and starting the Desert Storm. So he would have you believe what is an actual revisionist history right in current time. We removed ourselves from Afghanistan because we acknowledged that we had done it again, that we had done something stupid again. But when we went to war in Iraq, both times, it was very popular, kid. You don't know. You weren't even alive, which is funny. Both times, very popular. First time, 90s, it was on time. Everybody watched it on the news, followed it every day. Second time, you couldn't have been more than a couple years old. Very popular because 9/11. We went to Afghanistan too because 9/11. This is what I'm talking about, a lack of perspective. I mean, like literally trying to rewrite history as it occurs now. What? No. That's moronic. It's literally moronville. Dude, what?
This is why I say I don't know. I do not understand foreign policy.
I mean,
so why are you having this discussion? So what, Pearl? Why is Pearl having this discussion if she doesn't understand foreign policy? Why don't you have somebody on that can have the interaction with him and you moderate? Because it's easy for Pearl's agenda.
Considerable degree, but like in 2008, Obama wins going against the war. So what happened in 2000?
Why?
Okay, so let me just
seriously, why
flip
don't you
over
own
to
these?
my. Sorry for the advertisement. As you all know, I'm cheap and I'm just not taking part. So while the advertisement rolls, I just got to say, Obama didn't win on getting out of the... I mean, like, that's such a simplification of why Obama won in 2008. What were you... He's in his early 20s. He was a little kid. So, he had no say in that. What had happened was that the U.S. was tired of a lack of diversity, and here was this really well-spoken, invigorating dude who had a whole slew of changes, specifically healthcare. Now, you weren't old enough to know, so you don't. Healthcare was the number one thing on everybody's mind. If you think of something else, I mean, like, Iraq was just one of those things in the background. There were so many things going on. And as someone who was invited to the White House, myself, let me tell you something, kid. Your lack of knowledge is stellar to the point of me saying kid to you, because you're talking like a child who has no perspective. And Pearl, shame on you for having this person on and then admitting, I don't know anything about this subject. So stop talking about it and stop hosting it. It just makes your platform look ridiculous and like you've jumped the shark very clearly. Okay? All right.
In what was it? In 2011, he winds it down. 2014, boom, ISIS. ISIS was created by America and Israel. That was the reason why we. Well, okay,
no. In untrue, ISIS and Israel. Okay. There's a incredible documentary, and I'm going to blank on the name. On YouTube about the history of radicalization and the subsequent groups of insurgencies from the original Afghanistan war of the 1970s and how they changed over time. ISIS was a reaction to bin Laden's group because they thought that bin Laden was in league with the West. And one thing instigated another. And if you don't understand how the tribalism works in the Middle East, Northern Africa, and such. You could say something as stupid as what he's saying above. Smirking like he knows better. But he doesn't know anything that he's actually saying. He's just literally spouting bullshit right here. It's disturbing because of the platform. I mean, like, 19 minutes. And this guy's 19 minutes. It's been up and there's over 1,000 views. Oh, it's salacious. But damn, there's a lot of thumbs up, which is Pearl. What the you doing? And look, he's smirking at it because he's like, oh, I got you. You don't know anything I'm talking about, so I can say anything. And all you can do is be like, I don't know.
Skeptical.
No, I'm just, what?
Untrue.
ISIS was created by America and Israel.
Yeah.
Okay.
To destabilize Syria and also to keep, in my opinion, to keep us there in
Yes,
Iraq.
in your opinion, which is completely uninformed. Wow, you could see that he's selling a line of BS right there. This is untrue. If any organization could be pointed to as like more intrinsically involved, it would be Osama bin Laden and his group. Why? Because he had worked with the U.S. government. We flew his family out of the country on 9/11, famously so, for their own protection. So he's got a lot of things kind of backwards. It sounds to me like he's spent a lot of time in an echo chamber of right-wing nationalist information, and he's just picking and choosing out of that. And now he's selling it to Pearl because she's susceptible to be sold these concepts.
But either way, it's like look.
But either way, it doesn't.
The point is, even if you okay, maybe
like,
that's a little far fetched, but look,
yeah, it is,
that
bro.
is my belief, though. But we were in
it has no backing, but I believe it.
Under false pretenses, they told us we're there because
for the nuclear weapons, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
No, wrong. In Iraq, the original first time in the 90s, long before you kids were born. That's not why we went back the second time. The second time we were mopping up, and it was a convolution of two things. We were mopping up our mistake and also going back because of the extremism after 9/11 for our own self-protection, basically to reinforce the country and also to pillage its oil and to protect against Iran. I mean, if you don't understand the geopolitical situation and the positioning, don't have this freaking discussion, folks, because it's too simplified. If you don't understand the boundaries and the borders of all these countries and what's going on historically, you don't know. You wouldn't know. If you hadn't spent your whole life being a nerd like me, loving these things, generationally, like my family has, you wouldn't know. You didn't have family in the government. If you didn't have a lifetime like myself of traveling around the planet and seeing these things firsthand, from a different point of view, you wouldn't know. But somebody like this schmuck would have a whole set of people that look like him. Oh, it's gonna be, he looks like me, and he, wink, wink, nod, nod. You know what that means. Yeah, I do. Inbred stupidity. And by inbred stupidity, I mean echo chamber stupid. Circle jerking. The mental flip-flops and the amount of ludicrous lack of knowledge here. Just the historical, and then the wherewithal to put, the audacity to put yourself, Pearl, in a political conversation and have no geopolitical knowledge, makes me pound the table. Makes me pound the table. Yeah, that's right. I readjusted my camera. I think you can see my open case back there. one of them. Anyhow, I hate giving this a platform. But fuck, you got to see how stupid this is. Come on, people.
Nuclear weapons, and he was responsible for 9/11, all the stuff that wasn't true. And we're there.
You're confabulating two different
Obama
things.
gets elected to pull us out. He pulls us out. And then what happened? Oh, well, they came up with a reason to keep us there, which was ISIS. And
No. You're mistaking two different things. ISIS was in ISIS was in Afghanistan and the surrounding areas. After the fact, ISIS was not involved with us bringing us, or ISIL, was not involved in bringing us back into Iraq. They went to Iraq after we were already there as a support for the counterinsurgency against us, and they brought the war back to life. We'd already been there to mop up and follow up after 9/11. So get your history straight and stop being a moron. Because that's when you just spout BS, you're a moron. Let me just cut through the chase. It's not name calling if you're acting out the action of moronic behavior. That makes you a moron. That's how words work, kids. It's not a safe space because you can be hit by an asteroid. There's no such thing. So, by the way, if you put yourself out there in the world, just like myself, you got to have the humility to hear what's said to you. And this person has clearly not heard anything, much less that he can't even see what's happened in life. No fly list. Pearl, why do you have him on? This is going to, I believe this might affect you. This is going to affect you. That's crazy. Hopefully it's not positively because, and I got to say that, hopefully it's not positively because you're giving a hate speech human a platform.
you know, some people believe it's organic or not in 2013. But they came up with another reason to keep us there in perpetuity. Trump gets elected. Basically the same thing. Trump, in the primary debates, says with Jeb Bush, it was a mistake to go into Iraq. You said there were weapons of mass destruction. There weren't any. George Bush should have been impeached. That was treason. He gets elected. Guess what they don't do? Pull out of Iraq.
Yeah, okay. Political and wartime timing, military intervention, and the practices thereof are not simplified down to we want to come and go. That's one of the reasons we went back to Iraq. So your lack of knowledge about the subject tells on itself here, because the reason we don't just like jump out of places is because we built up an infrastructure that, one, we benefit from. Two, we would also F up some other country and leave a vacuum of power. That if you didn't know anything about those things, you'd think it's just simple. We just get out. We just vote. Let's just get out. I want to be gone. It's not flippant like you talk about. But then again, you would only talk about this flippantly if you didn't have any perspective. And I can't believe what a platform you have without any perspective or knowledge whatsoever. It is disturbing, disgusting, and those that follow you. And Pearl, shame. Shame on you. Shame on you.
He tried. He tried to pull us out of those wars. And it came down to, in the last few weeks of his first term in 2020, instruction went out to the generals that said, pull us out of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria.
But by then, that particular president had a no confidence notice passed around the intelligence services because of his abuse and misuse of intelligence records. From leaving top secret documents open in their secure bags on his desk with non-secure guests in the room, to handing over secrets in the Oval Office to foreign secretaries of governments that we're currently fighting against, who are our enemies, aiding and abetting the enemy as president. There's pictures of it. Sharing sharing intelligence secrets and giving away intelligence targets to the foreign secretary of the Russian government. So excuse the military if they were going to ignore his ass in his last few weeks as a lame duck president who's fighting, and during which time he was saying, I won the election despite the record and votes not showing that. Think about that. You think the military is going to listen to that guy? It's really interesting to me that somebody's childlike, simple concept of these very complex and nuanced systems always comes down to, well, and it's not. It's not. If you think that all of these systems are just that simple, that the president wanted to pull us out of a war, then you're not thinking things through. And that's the case with a lot of these arguments and positions. And that's one of the things that I think Pearly didn't do. I don't think Pearl thought it through, which is why people stay in their mental prisons. It's not about what country you live in. It's about the country in your mind, the position and state of the prison in your mind. Wow.
South Korea, Germany, you know what the general said? No, we will not carry out the order. Now, the president's the chief, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Yeah, but he's not the king. And the chief of the armed forces can ask for a lot of things, but if his chiefs of staff or his generals say, no, I'm sorry, sir, we cannot commit to that, he has to listen. It's not a one-way street. So that's another childish, like, I want to live in a place where I can just demand things. And that's why Putin's great. I mean, seriously. He sees things as if he wants to live in a cave. And the person with the biggest bat wins. And that's a lot of the jock mentality that keeps coming back up, is like, if we lived in a world where the guy with the biggest bat wins, I'd always win. So that, yeah, shush. Shush, we don't, thankfully. We don't. It's the one with the biggest brain wins. Normally we have nebbish little bodies, by the way, and we hire out goons to, that's how that works. That's why there's armies. That's why there's militaries, and you never see somebody like Putin fighting in them.
He's the head, like he's the supreme leader of the military, because he's a civilian, head of the civilian government. The military refused to carry out the order. So it's like, that's just one example of something where it's like,
by the way,
hey,
that's not,
nice
they don't equate to
idea
one
in a
another,
democracy.
dumbass.
If you don't like what's going on, you vote, and we all get to make a decision. Well, Americans voted against the Iraq War in 1, 2, 3 elections. And we're still there 20 years later.
And you think that's because of the special interest groups?
Okay, so the reason we're still there has little to do with special interest in that case. I mean, if you want to talk about special interests, that's the funny is if it's some subset. No, it's the controlling entity over the entire purpose of war. If you don't understand that, you shouldn't be having the conversation. We don't go to war without an agenda. There's always going to be on the face value the argument over the tribal parties. But underlying that argument is always going to be a larger agenda. And I understand that that's what this conversation pretends to get to. But they don't know how to get to it because they're too busy selling the underlying agendas that keep the argument going and keep the war going. Misinformation is a powerful tool to keep people spinning in a centrifuge. And once they get out of the centrifuge, they're completely dizzy. And so once they get into the maze that's outside of the centrifuge, they think that this must be the world around us. Oh, good, look, there's a piece of cheese. Oh, and it fits my idea now that I'm confused and spinning. You know what I mean? You got catching my drift? This is manipulation. A Pearl of her audience. Pearl! What the heck? Pearl? Yeah, I'm screenshotting this confused look on her face.
Wouldn't that military officer get fired then? You would
What do you
think?
mean?
If he wasn't listening to the commander-in-chief?
Who's going to fire him?
What are you
commander in
talking
chief?
about?
No.
No, because the problem is, well, number one,
Well, number one, let me change the topic because I don't know what I'm talking about. Dude. First off, it's the difference between denying a direct order, disobeying a direct order, or insubordination, multiple levels, reasoning for such, and we have this little thing that it's called democracy. And he seems to like to confabulate or confuse the two. He doesn't know how it works. So he wants it to work in a certain way, and because it doesn't work in a certain way, then it must be thrown out. So this is the reality. We should be thankful for the system of checks and balances because it stops any one of our representatives from being non-representative. Then a whole group of people have to look at each other and go, yep, this is the right choice. And if a whole group of people go, geopolitically, this would be a bad option for us because X, Y, and Z. In a lot of cases, it has to do with shoring up other interests, having military protection for our own interests, not failing the government that we prop up or build or help to support as it grows. I mean, the simplification or the oversimplification thereof is a mistake, and it is a red flag. It's snitching on yourself. That you don't know shit about the thing you're talking about, and that it's too complex for your baby brain. And instead of standing back and learning and experiencing for yourself, or really going to this situation or spending any time learning about the situation, you'd rather ignore what's happened to you as a result of your stupidity and keep yapping on and taking advantage of people like Pearl. Because that's what I think has happened here. Pearl, you got had. Bing, ding, 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 ding.
it was too late at that point.
Right. He was on his way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is what we found out with the Trump presidency, because the Trump presidency was like, it was like an asteroid hitting democracy, because it was a real test. It was like, here's a guy that was opposed by all of the institutions, the media, the Democrats, Republicans, even Fox News was against him, actually. Everybody was against him, and he won. And that means that, like, they're still counting our votes, and the result of the election was respected, so that's a good sign. But he gets in there, and he was totally sabotaged by his own personnel, by the congressional leadership, by...
This is where accountability just gets escaped. I mean, this is cognitive dissonance in the mind of a Kyle Rittenhouse head. Everything else undermined him. He played no role in it whatsoever. Look, if you go into a system, and I know this from my own experience, if you go into a system and you think that you're going to change and overhaul that system with wild ideas, no matter how sensible they may seem to you, everybody's going to fight you. And at some point, they're going to toss you out because you don't fit into that system, no matter how much you think you're doing good. Now, if you go into a system with a bunch of ideas that are only going to be self-serving and they're contradictory to the system itself, that's going to be even worse for you. So if you go into that system with a lack of knowledge and think you can run it like a crime organization, when that system is the opposite of that, it's going to have an even worse repercussion and slapback. And this is what I'm talking about, a cognitive dissonant response on the part of somebody who's in support, who doesn't know how the system works and wants to support some other schmo who doesn't know how the system works, who wanted to actually take advantage of the system for himself. The mental gymnastics are astonishing. Flipping around in a bowl, saying there's cereal, but it's empty. Wow. Wow. Pearl!
deep state, the bureaucrats that run the executive branch. And at the end of it,
I don't know. Okay. This, but...
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pearl. Pearl doesn't know. She finally says, I have no clue. I have no clue what you're talking about. But that's when she should have said, you know what? I don't need to have this on a platform. Look, there's 5 other videos that I did over the past 2 days that I haven't put up because there's no reason to have them on my platform. That's what happens when you self-edit. You pick and choose the things that fit best, that align most with the storyline, with the picture, and with the agenda. At least I'm honest about my agenda. I'm trying to take down this big old obelisk and make the Ben fall to the ground so we can all use it to shot put or something. I don't know. Keep it in the corner so it holds the door open. That's different. I'm face value. I'll tell you that every day, all day. Stand on that hill. But this is sneaky. This is undermining her entire project. I don't know why she would do this other than she must be hanging out with these people and she must have met with this dude and been like, oh, we're on a panel together. Similar ideas. Why don't you come share it? And then she realized probably in the middle of the interview, wow, this is kind of nuts and I'm not prepared for this. Shame on you, Pearl. How many times have I said this now? Damn.
Like the IRS and the Defense Department, the State Department, all because the executive branch, the president changes, but the people that work in these branches of government, most of them, they stay for life.
And how was he sabotaged by them?
So
there's the shot. That's the one I've been looking for. All right. And how did he sabotage them? That's a leading question based off of her agenda. Not, do you have any proof that he was sabotaged? Do you have any information? How was he sabotaged? How you format your questions, how you place them, and who you have them with. That makes a big deal. Makes a big, giant deal, folks. And, Pearl. I mean, it's one thing to have had a conversation that you didn't know about and say, I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about this guy. It's counter to my beliefs, blah, blah, blah. But she's not saying any of that in any of these interviews that I've watched so far this morning. And I'm disturbed because of the influence this could have. But let me tell you something, folks. This is nothing more than another mental prison builder, no matter what they say about this. This is just another corner of the BS because it doesn't have a role in getting along or beating those that would have you believe it. Somebody is benefiting off of this. In this case, well, I think it's pretty apparent. There's an oligarch named Putin who benefits off of every dime from the propaganda. Every dime made off of all of the subsequent interactions and advertisements, etc., 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 that you would be shocked to find out that character has his hands in, much less that there are many world-leading folks whose names you may know and may not know that are involved in this picture. But what we're watching here is a red herring. It's a position to take an argument amongst us instead of focusing on those who really do the damage. This guy would have you look the wrong way. He's part of the magic trick. And Pearl, once again, shame on you for having no knowledge of the subject and yet offering this person a platform. Goodness gracious, ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, cross-eyed mosquitoes and bull-legged ants, I ask you, don't forget to like and subscribe because this conversation goes on. I gotta go dunk my head in some warm water because I feel greasy now. I feel less greasy just splattering my face in biscuits and gravy, which I love. But it does make me greasy. this conversation, it hurts my brain. It's a 10-minute, it's less than a 10-minute video. I've just spoke for an hour 35. Wow. I'm shocked. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I could say anything to you other than like and subscribe over and over, like and subscribe to videos, make sure to check them all out. Don't build your own prison, okay? Don't build your own prison. Democracy, very simply, better than no democracy. Let's just simplify that. The vote is important. It is representative. Don't believe the lie that benefits only a few that benefit you not voting. And don't forget, folks, the most important of all, look up!